ACC Power Rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. Best discussion, debate, and analysis because of your support and contribution. All right. Earlier in the season, after all the big non-conference games, we ranked the conferences 1 through 5, the Power 5. We will do so near the end of the season as well when the ACC and the SEC get together for their 4 big matchups on Thanksgiving weekend. In the meantime, we are going through power rankings among the major conferences. And in the ACC, the clear worst team in the conference has been Boston College. They lost to UConn this past weekend. They lost to UConn, and they scored 3 points. Jeff Hafley is one of the fine young coaches in college football, we thought, and he may still prove to be. But they are having a rough go after being projected to win 7, 8, 9 games this season. BC is only 1-4 in the ACC. They've only won 2 games overall. And Phil Jurkovec does not rank in the top 100 in the nation's pass efficiency leaders. That's how bad it's been for Boston College. They've got a date against Duke. At least they get the loss out of the way early, I guess, this weekend, playing on Friday night. At number 13, we go to a major rebuild in Blacksburg under Brent Pry, and that's Virginia Tech. The Hokies play Georgia Tech coming up this weekend. They have the 47th ranked offense in the country in total yardage, but number 115 in scoring. Virginia Tech's not a good football team. They blew a 21-3 lead against North Carolina State. Could have been a major building block win for the team last weekend. They failed in that one, 22-21 against the Wolfpack. We got Virginia Tech at number 13 in the ACC. At number 12, their arch rivals and a team that has gone from one of the 15 or 20 best offenses in the country to one of the very worst. Virginia did not score a touchdown against Miami, and they've done this several times this season. They lost in 4 overtimes, did not score a touchdown, didn't see the end zone. Brennan Armstrong has had the most precipitous drop-off of any player in college football. 31 touchdowns, 10 picks last season, in leading the nation in passing offense. Had the most yards per game passing last season. That's been cut in half from about 440 per game to 220. 6 touchdowns and 9 picks. He's thrown 6 touchdown passes, and he's only got 4 games left. Virginia, a major drop-off offensively with Tony Alford as the head coach now, and they've got a date against North Carolina this weekend. At number 11, the team that also couldn't score a touchdown against Virginia, and that's Miami. Tyler Van Dyke, of course, on the shelf with an injury. Jake Garcia's come in and been a turnover machine, at least against Duke, of course, the previous week. The running game has been a disaster. They've been nicked up in the backfield, lost major players in a running back room that looked to be one of the very best in the ACC. Henry Parrish is coming off a nice 113-yard game to lead the offense this past week. We've got Miami at number 12, and the Hurricanes take on Florida State. At number 10, the Pitt Panthers, only 4-4, coming off an ACC championship. Israel Apanakanda is the bright spot, of course, 16 touchdowns on offense. They do rank in the top 20 in sacks, but that's a drop-off from a top 3 sack defense in the past 4 seasons at Pitt. The Panthers blew a fourth-quarter lead against North Carolina, being outscored 21-0, and they go to Virginia coming up on November 12th after a bye week. At number 9, Georgia Tech. We were talking hope with the Ramblin' Wreck just a few weeks ago. They had lost 13 consecutive ACC games, 10 consecutive games against FBS opponents. But Jeff Collins got fired, and they got immediately better. They won 2 consecutive games against decent opponents, Duke and Pitt. Then they lost Jeff Sims, and there went all the hope. And they've got no hope without Jeff Sims. They couldn't score a touchdown against Virginia, and now they lose another game as well. They've lost 2 consecutive games after that brief glimmer of hope at 2-1 in the ACC Coastal. Georgia Tech is now 3-5 overall. They go to Virginia Tech, and we'll see which ones got less hope between Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech this weekend. At number 8, Louisville. They've looked awful at times this season. They even lost to Boston College. But where did this come from on Saturday? Only a curious 3.5-point underdog against a top 10 Wake Forest team, and wallop. Tyon Evans ran for 106 yards. The defense had 8 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, and of course those 8 turnovers in upsetting and pummeling Wake Forest by 27 points. Louisville is now 5-3 overall, and the season looks much brighter, taking on a spunky James Madison team outside the conference this weekend. At number 7, how about Duke? They've been playing good football, respectable football, even in losses the entire season. Check out the North Carolina game. They were inside the 10 to ice the game in the final 2 minutes and blew the game there. But Duke right now stands at 5-3, 2-2 in the conference. Riley Leonard leads the team in both passing and rushing. They've got a date against BC coming up on Friday. All right, at number 6 in the ACC, we really take a step up here for the final 6 teams, and that's Florida State. The Noles coming back against a Georgia Tech team that they should have put away, and they did so from the opening kickoff. This is what a good team should do against a bad team. Put them away from the start. Jordan Travis, almost 400 yards passing. They had a 100-yard rusher and receiver, and Florida State moves on to the back half of their schedule after that rough 3-game stretch with 3 consecutive losses to Clemson, Wake, and NC State. Florida State in good position at 5-3, taking on the Canes, their arch rival, Saturday night. At number 5, NC State. Almost a completely different team with Devin Leary on the bench now due to injury and out for the season. NC State a solid 6-2. They've got Wake Forest coming up in a nice matchup this Saturday. But once Leary left the lineup and he was not having nearly the season that he did last year, they almost became a different offense with Jack Chambers, the running quarterback. But then they had to turn in a comeback effort to M.J. Morris against Virginia Tech, coming back from 21-3 down. He hits on 20 of 29 for 3 touchdowns, so NC State back at it after a loss to Syracuse the previous week, and NC State at 6-2 at number 5 in the ACC. At number 4, Wake Forest. What happened? I'll tell you what happened is Wake Forest is a tremendous football program under Dave Clawson, but without tremendous talent. So there is no difference between Wake Forest and NC State and Louisville and all these other teams, Syracuse, in terms of talent acquisition. But Wake Forest just does it better than everyone else, and they've got that passing offense that's the best in the conference. However, when it's not working, it's not working. And there's not a talent gap between Louisville and Wake. If anything, the Cardinals are probably a more talented roster, and they showed it. So when Wake is not on its game, it's going to go, and it's going to go bad. And it did. 6 turnovers in 1 quarter. I don't even know how it's possible to get the ball back that many times, to turn it over 6 times. But 8 turnovers, just the worst possible performance out of a Dave Clawson team that you could ever imagine. But it's only 1 game. And Wake still has that double overtime loss to Clemson on its resume, which is the best losing performance by far, probably better than all the other wins in the conference this season. And Wake has been solid all year. We're not going to knock them down too much for that one awful showing. Wake at 6-2, number 4 in the ACC, taking on NC State on the road this Saturday. At number 3, we've got a decision to make between North Carolina and Syracuse. North Carolina, I believe, right now is playing better football. They're in a better position, obviously, playing in the Coastal, and they've had an easier schedule. So for that, I really like what Syracuse has done this season, even though they really got hammered against Notre Dame in the second half on Saturday. North Carolina at number 3. The Heels are coming off a big win against Pitt. 21 consecutive unanswered points at home to win a key Coastal game. They now have a commanding lead in the division at 4-0. Drake May threw for 388 and 5 touchdowns. He's the only quarterback, as it currently stands, to average more than 300 yards passing per game and lead his team in rushing, along with Johnny Manziel and Patrick Mahomes. That's pretty damn good company. Drake May and North Carolina at 7-1. Number 3 in our ACC power rankings. And I continue to give the nod to Syracuse at number 2. Consider these points. Syracuse, not North Carolina, has had to play Clemson, and they played them down to the wire. They outplayed them most of the game. They led 21-10. They do lose that game. North Carolina has yet to play NC State. Syracuse has played NC State, and they beat them by multiple scores. They knocked off a good Purdue team. Syracuse has just played more difficult opponents by far when compared to North Carolina. So even at 3-1 with a loss in the conference and 6-2 overall, I'm going with Syracuse over North Carolina in that number 2 position, even though they're coming off a lousy performance against Notre Dame in which they gave up 42 points. Garrett Schrader had a miserable day, 16 of 36, 2 picks, couldn't run the ball, only 25 carries for 61 yards against the Irish. Syracuse will probably continue to plummet as they face even more difficult games coming down the stretch. We kind of saw this coming, but as it stands right now, based on the resume, Syracuse at number 2. And our clear-cut number 1, they pretty much won the division and maybe even the conference weeks ago when they knocked off Wake Forest in double overtime. That was the game that set the division on its head, that turned the tide in Clemson's favor, and they won all the key matchups in the division. And after a bye week, they go up to Notre Dame. Of course, that doesn't factor in the ACC standings or the power rankings necessarily, but they go to Notre Dame to try to protect their path to the college football playoff against a Notre Dame team that is now showing life with recent wins against North Carolina and Syracuse. This is not a dominant defense, though. Just outside the top 25 in total defense, number 25 in yards per play defense. Of course, we saw DJ Uiagalelei get benched against Syracuse. Dabo came out, made it very clear he's still our guy, but it sets precedent that if DJ struggles again and Notre Dame is playing strong defense, that Cade Klubnik may get the call in South Bend. Our number 1 team in the ACC is clearly Clemson. All right, folks, leave your comments down below on the ACC Power Rankings. We will do our best to deliver all the Power 5 rankings as well as previews for Week 10 right here at the Voice of College Football.